who would like to start? We're just going to have a nice chat this afternoon. Who would like to start by having a go at defining exactly what the circular economy is? Because I think there are probably a few people out there in the audience who are maybe a little bit unsure. And I think the term, it varies. So how would you guys interpret it? Who wants that one?
I don't mind starting.
Go for it, Joe.
I'll call on my other panelists to pick up what I miss. One of the best ways to define the circular economy kind of from scratch is to talk about what it isn't. So it's not the take, make, waste linear economy that we've had really since the start of the Industrial Revolution. So that was a model that, on the face of it, worked quite well. It enabled us to have air travel and medicines and accessible food for most people, many people to have that. But it relied on a number of things. It relied on abundant energy and resources that were cheap and easy to come by. We had loads of space to put stuff when we didn't want to think about it anymore. And lots of people who were willing and able to buy stuff. And there's a growing group of people who are saying those things aren't actually the situation that we're in the 21st century. So it's a model for a new type of economy based on 3 principles: design out waste and pollution from the start, keep products and materials in use, and regenerate natural systems.
Fantastic. And you mentioned, why don't we go through the panel first of all? Now we've got the definition firmly in place. And introduce yourselves a bit better than I've done it already. Tell us what you're doing in your daily roles at your organizations.
Great. Well, wonderful to be here with you. This is such a fantastic event, and thank you for putting together such a wonderful panel. So I'm Kate Brandt. I'm the Sustainability Officer at Google, and I have the great honor of working across our global operations on our sustainability strategy. And increasingly, a big focus for us is this topic of the circular economy. So excited to dig in today and talk about what that looks like for us in our data centers, our offices, our hardware, but also the really exciting role that we think technology can play in accelerating this transition.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, great. Peter is my name. Peter Vanacker, CEO of Neste in Finland. Some of you saw me already because I already gave a little talk. We at Neste, we believe in chemical recycling, circular economy. We can be part of the solution. We have already a 10-year heritage whereby we take waste and residues. So we are recycling them and make today a fuel out of it. The fuel can be used, for road transportation. It can also be used for aviation. And it can be used as a raw material to produce a new polymer or chemical out of that. Next thing that comes is chemical recycling. So we take the waste plastic, recycle it back, and have another renewable polymer made out of it.
Okay, I had the pleasure to work for the first packaging recovery organization in the world, which was the Green Dot organization in Germany. It started in 1991, and I joined this system in 1996 and worked in this system for 12 years, first for plastic packaging recycling and then later on for all packaging recycling. I learned really a lot, and I think that is the reason why since 11 years I work now for Tetra Pak, today heading the circular economy function within sustainability for Europe and Central Asia, Greater Middle East and Africa, and Greater China. And my daily work is actually to make recycling happen everywhere, even in countries where no infrastructure is yet in place, so that we work there a lot with with developing local collection networks. These are individual waste pickers that we connect with paper mills who want to recycle beverage cartons, because this is our product. It's beverage cartons for food and beverage, so we call it beverage cartons. And this consists of 75% fiber from sustainably managed forests certified by FSC, 20% plastics, which we try to use more and more from bio-based sources, so biopolymers, and I heard today that this is difficult to recycle more difficult than virgin material, which is actually not the truth. From my experience, the functionality is the same. It has the same chemical structure, but the origin is a sugar cane that we use as a source for our material. And then what is left is 4% aluminium that our vision is to replace in the next couple of years by also bio-based material. We want to deploy to our customers in the food and beverage industry packaging material that is made of 100% renewable material and is 100% recyclable.
And my name is Joe Iles. I'm the editor-in-chief of Circulate, which is the publication from the MacArthur Foundation. The foundation is a charity set up in 2010 with a mission to accelerate transition to a circular economy. And we work with business, with people like Google, with learning and academia, governments and cities, communications, and systemic initiatives in plastics, fashion, and food.
Why don't we talk about packaging a little bit? It's been spoken about quite a lot through the conference, but at the moment, everything is packaged. We've got, as someone pointed out earlier on a panel, all of these bottles on the table full of stuff. And do we really need bottles and packaging for everything? I noticed, Kate, that you've got your own, which is well done you. But how big is the packaging crisis at the moment on Earth? Would anyone like to take that?
I mean, I've spoken a lot already, so...
Packaging crisis, what do you call a packaging crisis? So I work with countries where you have loose milk in the market, you have hygiene aspects because of the weather conditions, you have health issues, the productivity of the farmers is really low because they lose a lot of the milk that they have produced or their cows have produced because of the conditions. So it really depends on where you are on the globe. And I fully agree that the packaging consumption here in Western Europe is by far too high, but in other parts of the world, it's completely different.
I mean, we did some research for as part of our new plastics economy work, and the finding from that was that even though the recycling symbol has been around for about 40 years, about 14% of plastic packaging is collected for recycling, and of that, about 2% is actually recycled from, like, I think it was Rodrigo from Skipping Rocks earlier who was saying about it's quite difficult to go from bottle to bottle, or it doesn't happen as much as you think when you put your plastic bottle in a recycling bin. So I think the situation is bad, and the approach we've taken is in 3 parts. Eliminate the plastics that you don't need. So the Skipping Rocks, the edible water blob is a good example of that. So eliminate the stuff you don't need. Innovate better solutions for the stuff that you do need, like refillable, reusable solutions or different types of materials, and then circulate the plastic that you do create. So if you need to create plastic packaging, create it in a way and have a business model and a system in place to keep it in use and value it rather than letting it leave the economy as waste.
And I just wanted to add, I mentioned that something that we're really interested in, and we've been doing a lot of work with the foundation on, is the role of technology. How can we utilize technology to gain better insights and to drive more circular systems? So we published a paper with the foundation back in January on the role of AI in the circular economy. And one of the major opportunities that we uncovered in that paper is circular infrastructure. How do we utilize AI to drive more effective circular infrastructure? And so there's this topic around how do we make recycling more effective? How do we utilize technology to do that? And we've seen some really innovative companies. There's one called Zen Robotics that is using AI and machine learning to do better sorting, to do better identification in waste processing facilities. And so we see some really interesting opportunities that are emerging there.
How does that work? So when you say use AI to improve your practices, what exactly does that mean? So you're using software to look at what you're currently doing, and then I'll let you explain.
Yeah, so some of the models that we're seeing, and again, this isn't something that we're actively doing, but more from the research we did in this paper, was innovative players like Zen Robotics that are using both they're using AI to do better identification. So when you're sorting, to be able to tell, okay, that's a plastic bottle, that's a glass bottle, that's a newspaper, to get cleaner streams. And then that makes it much easier to recycle, to upcycle, to cycle back into new products like the presentation we just saw before this.
So at the moment, I guess one issue is that it's very hard to filter out what is what, and we need machines to be smarter when it comes to separating, this glass bottle from that tin over there. And
I mean, we're amazing as a society, as an economy. We're amazing at making stuff. If you walk around any kind of industrial factory, I'd be surprised if you weren't blown away with the level of sophistication and technology, the speed with which things are made. The reverse journey, whether that's collecting something, taking it apart, sorting it out, it's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much work to be done, and technology can play a really vital part.
Okay, I'm interested to know, Google obviously is a huge organization, one of the biggest companies in the world, has lots of money so it can invest in things, and Google also consumes a lot of electricity. Every time we go and do a search or we send an email, some electricity is used to power a server in one of Google's data centers somewhere. But I understand that your data centers are some of the cleanest and greenest in the world too. So can you maybe tell us exactly how green the data centers are and what you're doing with old hardware when it reaches the end of its life cycle?
Absolutely. So at Google, our mission is to build sustainability into everything that we do. That's the focus of our sustainability program. And when it comes to our data centers, we're really focused on both carbon-free and circular. So we have been a carbon-neutral company since 2007, and in 2017, we reached 100% renewable energy for our operations. So that means on an annual basis, we're purchasing the same amount of wind and solar as we're consuming across all of our operations. So that's our data centers and our offices around the world. And equally, we're also really focused on energy efficiency. So that path to carbon neutrality is energy efficiency, renewable energy, and carbon offsets. And when it comes to energy efficiency, we've been focused on this since we started building data centers over a decade ago. But we've seen some incredible new advances, again, through this topic of machine learning. And so what we were able to do is we have lots of data sets, as you can imagine, in our data center. We're measuring power, temperature, pump speeds. And so we utilized a machine learning algorithm and created an AI-powered efficiency recommendation system. And that has enabled us to reduce the power used for our cooling by an additional 30% on top of the years of work we've put into our efficiency. So that's where we've been able to really focus on our energy footprint. And then when it comes to material, for those of you who've been inside of a data center or seen a photo of one, data centers are essentially rows upon rows of servers, basically just many, many computers. And we've taken a very circular approach to the management of that hardware. So we've said rather than just use a server and then when it's done, throw it away or recycle it, we've said no, there's a tremendous opportunity to utilize parts from old servers for maintenance, to actually pull servers off the floor and remanufacture them. And then when we're truly done with them, we can wipe clean all the data that's on them and then sell them on secondary markets. We did this with 2.1 million units last year. And then whatever is left gets recycled. So in this way, we're not only using way less raw material, but we're actually saving hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's really that economy in the circular economy. There's also a great business case.
Great. And just to give you an idea of how big and how energy intensive these data centers are, and you can correct me here, Kate, if I get these numbers wrong, but I read earlier that data centers use 3% of the world's electricity at the moment. It could be slightly more than that now. And they produce 2% of carbon emissions, although those emissions won't be from Google's data centers by the sounds of it. Do you think the circular economy is compatible with the Trump economy that we have in the US at the moment?
So I think, at Google, we're 20 years old now as a company, and sustainability has been a core value since our founding. So we've been at this through multiple different political administrations in the US, and of course, we're a global company. So sustainability is a core value for us. Our goals are clear, and we believe it's not only the right thing to do, but it actually makes sense for our business. We were just talking about the business case behind our server work. Equally, with our purchase of renewable energy, we're locking in today's prices and using that as a hedge against the cost of grid power going up. So renewables, also great business case for us. So we're going to keep doing this work. It's core to our values. And I think increasingly we're seeing that there's a lot of really great attention on the topics of climate and circular economy, and we're here to talk about why it makes sense for business.
Okay. Heike, when it comes to packaging, so you mentioned that you're working hard to try and make your packaging more sustainable, more biodegradable. How are you going? Sorry?
I don't believe in biodegradability because we don't have the technologies in place. So we
you mean when it comes to packaging, we can't make biodegradable packaging? Is that what you're saying?
No, we produce packaging that is recyclable but not biodegradable. And I think this is a misconception of plastics, that biodegradable plastics is really biodegradable. When you put it in nature, nothing happens. It doesn't degrade. And if you produce it and sell it and you don't have the industrial equipment in place, which is the case in most of the countries, then it doesn't degrade. So this is not actually an alternative that I see as a chance for the industry. I believe really in consuming less, in really make products more resource efficient. So for me, it's a responsible resource management system that we need to achieve, which needs to look into how much material is needed for what, and really to use the material that you can use in circles. So circular economy means we need to have an economy that is circular and a low-carbon economy. So, and that is what we are aiming for, and for our company it is really important ultimately that all of our beverage cartons that we sell are collected and recycled, and that not a single one ends up as litter or in a landfill. So that is really what we need to achieve.
Yeah, I share the same view. I mean, biodegradability, it's a nice fashion, but at the end, it ends up again. Yeah, the smallest component is a microplastic. So it all needs to be around. First of all, mechanical recycling, reuse again and again. And what can mechanically not be recycled through a chemical process, get the carbon out of the plastic through a liquefaction technology or another technology and a refining technology, and make a new plastic or a chemical out of it. And if everybody, I mean every consumer behaves in the right way, then it will end up again that plastic into the cycle. Now we have a couple of challenges because, of course, as we know, we like to throw things away and not think about what happens with it. And then the second thing is, of course, also if you today look at the regulation is actually foreseeing, for example, in Europe, that chemical recycling is not counted as recycling. It's counted as energy recovery. And in my opinion, that's a mistake. Yeah. So there needs to be a view on the regulation, and there needs to be a change of mindset on the regulation so that also chemical recycling is being incentivized, so it's counted against the recycling targets.
Did you want to say something there, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I don't agree with the comments about biodegradability. I mean, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a material scientist, but firstly, there are examples like ecovative packaging. It's grown from mycelium and agricultural waste that is a like-for-like replacement for polystyrene, which is biodegradable. Materials made from cellulose and chitin. There's organizations like Materium, which is a startup working around these organic materials. So I'm not saying that we're going to shift completely to biological materials and we won't have plastics. Of course we will. And I'm also not saying that everything that's possible with plastics now is possible with biological materials, because it's not. But as an aspiration of mimicking the way that nature uses materials, I think that is hugely inspiring, as opposed to saying it can't be done.
Peter, Heike, what do you think about what's wrong with these biological packaging solutions? And
I was talking about plastics, so in particular,
Okay.
so cellulose solutions is different, and I was not covering that one,
okay.
to make it clear.
And we've kind of mentioned that we live in this consumerist society. We're always buying things, throwing them away, especially clothes. It feels like we need a fundamental rethink in how we go about acquiring things and buying things and using things. So maybe we should just lease things or borrow things from companies or the government or whoever, instead of owning. We take too much pride in owning things sometimes, perhaps. What do you think about the idea of leasing and borrowing?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really interested in at Google is how can we provide helpful information to our users, and particularly educate people about this topic of the circular economy. So we recently partnered with the foundation, as well as our local science museum in San Francisco, the California Academy of Sciences, and we developed this tool called Your Plan, Your Planet. And it's basically based on the idea that we have, three major impacts on the planet: how we use and produce water, energy, and food, and then how we buy stuff and how we manage our stuff. And so there's a module in this tool that we designed that's all about this topic that you're bringing up, about how do we rethink stuff a little bit. One of the things that we learned in the process of making this tool is that every second a garbage truck full of clothes goes into the landfill. And we thought, how do we give people information so we can start to change that? And so if you go to g.co/yourplanyourplanet, you can check this out. And we are showing people that you can think much more broadly about ownership. There's things that it makes sense to own, like your jeans. But there are, your nice dress that you might wear to the gala dinner later tonight. That's a great thing to rent. There's fabulous opportunities to repair. You can go on YouTube. I'm not very handy at all, but I've started going on YouTube to figure out how to repair my stuff. So we really want to start to educate people on, we can think differently about ownership, and it doesn't only apply to clothes, it applies to many other things that we use in our lives.
Joe, I think you've looked into clothes a little bit, and
Yeah, so we've looked at this idea of leasing and rental as for a while now. The idea that sometimes you don't need to own a product, you just need the service it provides. The classic example was a power drill. You want the hole in the wall, you don't want this item.
you use that thing like once a year.
Exactly. I mean, the figure used to be like 12 minutes or 15 minutes or however long a drill was used in its lifetime. So some things would make sense to rent them. And for the manufacturer or the service provider to maintain ownership of that product, the longer that they can own it themselves and rent it to different people, the better the profit will be for them, because they can effectively sell it a number of times,
Right.
which incentivizes them to make it
But
durable.
at a lower cost, right?
At a lower
Obviously,
cost.
when someone comes and rents it for a weekend or a day,
Yeah.
they pay a small.
They pay a smaller fee, but if the design is right of the product itself, and that manufacturer or provider can keep repairing it, keep it in service for longer, then it makes profoundly better use of energy and resources. And there are examples. Grover in Germany is a good example of that. They're renting out kind of gadgets and hardware.
Yeah.
And clothing companies like Le Tote in the US or Y Closet in China, which is like it's rental but for fashion. So you can effectively subscribe to changing fashions rather than buying cheap stuff that you never wear.
And you mentioned earlier to me as well the example of Philips, who provide the lighting to Schiphol Airport.
Yeah, so rental has been happening in business to consumer market for longer, really. Things like Rolls-Royce do power by the hour for their jet engines. And with Philips, what they actually had this architect who is a Dutch architect who's a kind of big thinker, and he said, "I'm making my new office. I want some lighting, but I just want to buy light. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if you use bulbs, LEDs, sensors, switches. Just you sort it and you pick up the bill. And miraculously, Philips said, okay, we like a challenge. So they developed this solution that was called, I think the name might have changed, but at the time it's called Pay-Per-Lux. So the architect paid for a certain number of lumens of light per month, and Philips retained ownership of the hardware so they could collect it and repurpose it when they needed to upgrade it.
Can you see that kind of idea being rolled out into people's houses where people rent, they basically just pay their power bill, but they don't own the light bulb or the...
Yeah, I can. I mean, with this idea of ownership, people sometimes get a bit concerned about things that they, like, am I going to rent everything from one big company, which is a bit scary. But actually, there are some things that I actually don't care if I own it or not. I don't feel much of a sentimental attachment to my washing machine or to my light bulb. And I think what we're going to see is, and we're seeing with cars already, especially with young people saying, I just want the service. Can someone else take the burden away from me? Mm-hmm. If it breaks down, if it needs to be repaired, if a newer model comes out, can someone else take care of that?
It feels like there is a prime opportunity to really get young people on board with this circular economy idea. We've seen all the climate protests around the world. People are really starting to care about the damage that we've been doing to our planet over the last few decades. And I think if we can really promote the idea of the circular economy to the generations that's coming up, I think they'll embrace it. I just need some good marketing, some cool technologies and businesses to help them embrace the idea. But I think we'll get there. Is there anything else that we've only got 2 minutes left now, but is there anything else that any of you would like to add? Sorry, we've rambled on about this and that, but...
You were talking about clothes and all these kind of things, very nice, but I think everyone should realize that we are actually leasing or renting carbon. Yeah, the world is made out of carbon, yeah, but we're not gonna be there forever, and the next generations are gonna be there. And if we don't take up our responsibility in how we deal with that carbon, then it's only us that we can blame. Yeah, it's our behavior.
I would like to add to it that a circular economy is really a joint effort. So here also consumers play a role, legislators play a role, the industry plays a role, NGOs, and there needs to be more collaboration. Legislators, of course, need to set a level playing field. They need to secure that this is feasible. But I think a lot can be done more in partnerships, and this is where we definitely can improve from all sides. But we shouldn't forget the consumer, and education is, of course, an important part of it. And when I, last night during the speakers' dinner, spoke with other people about digitalization, I thought about, yes, okay, we have some really fancy ideas how to develop tools and cars, etc. But is the society prepared for it? So are the people on the level to use it? Can they do that? What do we do about it? So education is, from my perspective, really an important part of the whole.
Well, good. Okay, 28 seconds. So we'll leave it there, I think. But thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you, panel. And see you, everyone.